My name is Carson. Welcome to Thrifty Garage, a channel where we do everyday repairs, how-tos, and reviews. And in today's video, we'll be taking these stone blocks, loading them up on the trailer, and building a retaining wall. Here we've got them loaded up. We're going to head out and go to the job. This job was about 30 to 45 minutes away, so we had quite a bit of travel time into this job every single day. This load you can see here is actually the first load we took out. We took out one load of rock with the mini excavator to offload and to show the client what the stones were going to look like. And then the second day we started the job, we took another load similar to this. The game plan of this job was to take the mini X out there, and when we took the mini X out there, we tried to take as much rock as we could. This pallet right here, each of these stones weighs between 600 to 1,200 pounds approximately. So with the 8,000 pound mini excavator and about 2,000 pounds of rock here, we're about maxed out on this trailer. And then once the machine's on site, we could use it to offload additional loads of material, and we could do a full trailer load of stone. What we have going here is we have a storage yard that we had a semi-truck load to. This job site's pretty technical to get into. There's not room to get a semi-truck in there. So we used a middle point to offload a semi-load at our storage yard. We offloaded that with the skid steer, and then we're using the skid steer there to load the trailer, and the Mini X on site here to offload the trailer. So we're not going to be showing a lot of this drive time throughout the video, but this is the daily commute over here up to the job site. So here's our first load we're going to unload on site. This first load, I just used 2 ratchet straps on this. As we got further into this, I started using some rubber floor mats, a 3 foot by 3 foot rubber floor mat cut down, and those worked out perfect to protect the straps from these rocks. These rocks are pretty abrasive and will quickly eat through a strap. So as we're offloading here, this is a pretty technical job for this compact excavator. These stones are on the large or oversized size for this machine. But due to the job site, you can't really fit a bigger machine in here. So that when we purchased the Bobcat E35 for the landscape business, that was kind of the idea. Is a lot of our projects tend to be in this 35, 3.5 ton excavator range. So that's why we decided to go with that unit. I went back and forth on whether it was worthwhile to get a 40 or a 42, but ended up choosing on the 35. For those of you that haven't used a thumb on these compact excavators, these thumbs are a lifesaver. They are a essential tool, and they make jobs like this possible. When I first started landscaping, the company I worked for did a bunch of rock walls. They did a lot of the houses that were up on the mountain benches, and they started their business using a loader, a skid steer, and chains to install rock boulder walls. And then over time, excavators with thumbs became more popular, and that's by far the choice of many stone builders today. It's just a great attachment to these machines, and really makes them pretty versatile. So like I said, this first load was just to get these materials on site, show the client what they look like, show them in person. In our initial conversations, they pictured a much smaller stone to be used for the retaining wall. And in this situation, it just wouldn't have made sense. So just talking to the client on what we were doing and how we were doing it, it was very important to get these stones out here on site and show them physically what they were going to look like and make sure that they felt comfortable and that they were going to fit the space. Let's chain down the machine and get out of here. Strap down these pallets, roll up our extra tail here. And you can see here again how technical of a driveway this is to get into. This is a lot of work just to get in the truck and trailer. Can't imagine getting a semi-truck down this road. So this was the first load. That second load is that one we showed at the intro. We ended up pulling in some pipe on that second load and then another 3 or 4 boulders to get it going. Day 2. So here we are back on day 2. We've got 7 or 8 stones on site now. Got the machine on site, and this machine is here to stay for the longevity of the project. And as you can see here, again, pretty technical, pretty tight. Lots to look out for. We've got tree branches above, really tight clearances above. We've got the corner of the house here to deal with, and just barely enough room for this machine to get in here. Probably only 6 inches to spare. And here's what we're here to fix. So this is a railroad timber retaining wall. This was installed by the homeowner, and there's a couple of flaws here that caused this to fail prematurely. These timber retaining walls can be a pretty good solution if done properly. The biggest thing here is we've got 4 high timbers rebarred together, and you can see here they did a great job of throwing rebar through them and sticking them together. They are definitely one unit, but the problem here is they're not a continual section. The wall is not continually attached to each other. So over time, as we've got drainage issues in here, this has started to fail and lean forward. And that was the big reason for having us come in and replace these with something different. We looked at a couple different options. We priced out a paper block retaining wall, as well as ultimately we decided to go with the stone block retaining wall. And you know, the nice thing about the stone boulders is they are on the less expensive side of things, but they're also a very natural look, and it's going to really suit this space pretty well. So back to the railroad tie wall. To install those properly, what you have to do is you have to alternate the ties like bricks, and you also have to add dead man timbers every so often. About every other layer up until the surface, you want to have a dead man coming back at least a half of a timber or a full timber back, and then you've got basically a T connected to that front wall that's buried. And that's really what holds these walls together, is the back dead man is what holds the front face from leaning forward. These timber retaining walls do rot over time, and you can see here as we're pulling some of these out, some of these pieces are pretty rotted out, but overall it was structurally sound. It was just the fact that it wasn't installed 100% correct, and that's where these walls tend to fail. Like I said, I'm not bashing the client here. They did a great job for a homeowner not really knowing all the tricks of the trade. They did, like I said, they did a really good job of attaching these together and making sure this wall was going to last as long as they could. They used the extent of their knowledge on this, and it's very obvious with how difficult some of these pieces were to pull out. So now here we're pulling up the existing gravel here. The plan here was to restore that gravel area and replace those stepping stones, so we want to try and salvage as much of that material as possible. So we're just scraping it up against the house, getting it out of the way so we can dig out our areas so we can set our stones. And we've got a lot of excavation on this one, pulling out a lot of material. We'll have a lot of, you can see that tree there, very, very low clearance here, just tight working space here. So we'll make a big stockpile of material here because we'll be pulling out soil, we'll be replacing it with drainage, as well as we're gonna enlarge this space. So we're gonna push that bottom wall further out, and we're gonna pull that upper wall further in towards the house, because again, the main reason for doing this is the client wanted a hot tub put in this spot, so they needed to open up the space, increase the size. In our conversations initially, a big factor in this retaining wall was making sure we only had a small top width of the wall in order to have room for that hot tub in there. And these stones are about 14 to 16 inches at their narrowest, so we ended up being able to make this work by jogging over that top walkway and giving them enough space there for a hot tub. Here we got some existing drainage down there coming off that gutter downspout, so we'll be redoing that, so we're not too worried about tearing that up. And now I'm just excavating this to a point that I've got a little bit of a ramp down into there, so I can start ripping out those lower sections of wall and begin building the new retaining wall. Here we got a sandwich of 4 on these railroad timbers, and these timbers by themselves are pretty hefty. You know, they're probably 100, 150 pounds. So we've got you know, 500-600 pounds, maybe even 800 or 1,000 pounds right here in these timbers. And with the stone blocks and this timber right here, again, these are maxing out the machine, and so a lot of the stuff we have to pull all this weight up close against the machine. So we don't tip over. As we're extending it out, we're definitely at the max weight here, the tip over capacity. So you can see there, as I extend up the arm, it wants to tip you forward. But again, going into this job, I knew that was going to be the case. So it's just a matter of keeping things tight, working close. So we were pulling up the initial retaining wall. So initially they took some little landscape timbers, stuck them in a vertical position, sunk them into some concrete, and that was the initial wall. And that's more prevalent on the other side as we get towards the end of the video. We'll show phase 2. After we finished this first phase of the wall, we ended up, the homeowner wanted us to do the same thing on the other side. So we spent a few more days on site and did the other side as well. But that initial timber retaining wall was pretty interesting, and you could see that it had rotted out and had some problems. This one obviously had been buried when they installed that timber retaining wall, but the other side was still there and existing, so we can see that a lot better. So yeah, there's a pretty rotten timber right there. That's probably what the worst of them. That one just kind of crumbled on that top there. So working on the edge here and pulling up these things, always had to put down the blade so we weren't tipping forward as bad. But that always made it so when we pulled that timber in close, got that weight up close to the machine, we'd have to let off that weight so we could start moving the machine around. Okay, now we're here, we're excavating out for that first stone boulder down there at the bottom. We're going to put that down on the corner of the deck there. And you can see we've got a tape measure on the corner of the deck there, measuring out our height of wall. So we're going to have a stack of 4 tiers going up to the patio pathway. So we'll have 2 tiers on the bottom, 2 stones on the bottom, and then we'll have 2 stones on the top retaining wall. Yeah, so each of these tiers will be about 2.5 feet in height. Again, these compact excavators are just awesome for this type of work. They've got the articulating arm that really makes it so you can kind of get in there and do different actions. You know, having a tilt rotator would be sweet on something like this, but you're just adding a lot more weight on the end of the machine there, and will just reduce your capacity. So kind of have to scoot these into place and make them work out, and then go from there. Making another ramp here again so I can get down there closer. Pull out a few more of these timbers that are in our way. Okay, here's the first full load trailer we got here. You can see those little rubber mats that have been cut up to protect the straps there. And this is a full load on the trailer. I never took it to scale with a full load like this, but I did take it to scale with the mini excavator and the 4 stones in the front, and it was right with the capacity, so I just assumed that each of these stacks weighs about 2,000 pounds. When we get to the larger stones, some of these large ones may weigh a little bit more than that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think that I calculated they weighed upwards of 3,000 or 4,000 pounds depending on the size of the rock. But each rock weighed about like I said, between 500 and 1,500 pounds. Definitely putting this diamond seat to the test. You can see as we're offloading some of these, it takes quite a jostling on the trailer there. So this is a pretty abusive thing to be putting on both the machine and the trailer. So because of the width on this thumb, if these have a slight angle on them, it's really hard to get a good grip on stuff. So you can see here, that's just this stone. Most of these stones are pretty flush front and back, but this one's just got a slight bend in that back side, making this pretty hard to get off on there. But we'll get her off. Biggest thing I'm trying to prevent here is picking this up and dropping it on a fender or something like that. Another problem with offloading this trailer is we have to be close so that the machine has a better lift capacity, but because we're close, and we're up in the air like this, it really limits our ability to maneuver with the machine. It can't really go up, it can't really pull in. When you pull in, it kind of pulls it down and in. And then the lift hydraulic on this, many of these stones are at the max capacity or beyond the max capacity of the lift. So we can't even lift the arm up any higher because the hydraulic simply won't let it go. Okay, so after some finagling, we're finally getting out of here. We got hung up on this pallet a little bit, and these other stones are here in the way, and we got the ramps in the way, but we'll get her off. So I felt kind of bad going into this project, seeing that this client had just reseeded this area. It's something that I noticed on our first site visit. There was some work put into the job site, and in further conversations, he had disclosed that he'd also just paid somebody to reset all these stone pathways. But he saw this as a bigger picture project, wanted to get this taken care of, and he knew he'd have to reseed and take care of those areas and repair them. But he was willing to do that, considering the longevity of the stone, knowing that the timbers had kind of failed over time. But yeah, that's something we always try to be cognizant of as we're going into a job site, seeing what else has been done, trying not to tear up more than we have to. Here we definitely tore up this part of the yard, which is kind of the nature of the job. There's not really a way to be less impactful when doing this type of work. I guess we could have brought a crane in, lifted them from the front yard into the backyard and set them that way, or dropped them with a helicopter, but some things have a cost impact too, and it just didn't make sense. So I decided I didn't like the overlap on that stone, so we swapped it out for a shorter one. And just let's keep moving forward with these, keep placing these rocks one at a time, and building them like bricks, putting them together like natural Legos. toe nailed this last one into the hill here, and then we stack it up to the next one. And you know, back to the basics on a retaining wall. Again, their timber retaining wall, what holds it together is that dead man, really holds it forward, the face forward. What holds these in place is simply gravity. It's a gravity wall. The weight of the stones themselves is what's holding the earth back behind them. With that, we are doing drainage behind, because these are not intended to be a dam. If that water, drainage water, gets behind them, saturates the soil, these walls can fill over time. We're not going super high here, so the likelihood of this wall ever filling, even if the proper drainage wasn't done, is pretty low. But the taller you go 4 foot or higher on these walls, and you do have a higher chance of failure if you don't have proper drainage. So we are doing everything right on this one, because we are putting a very expensive and very hefty hot tub up here. I think we weighed the hot tub with water. It's going to weigh around 6,000 pounds, and we just wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be a chance of failure. You know, the last thing I wanted to do is you know, have a client call me and say we've got a hot tub in the pond down below because the wall failed. So doing everything right here, going above and beyond, a little bit extra precautions. So we will be doing some proper drainage here in a little bit. Here we've got another contractor on site. He brought me a load of gravel, as well as was hauling away this extra concrete from that old retaining wall. So here's that drain pipe. We've got this is just landscape fabric, weed fabric we're putting down here, and this will just act as a filter fabric to prevent the sediment from entering into this gravel area, and it also keeps the gravel from spilling out in between these stones here. So we've got some sizable cracks and crevices, and you know, this 1-inch clean gravel here could easily be pushed through those holes, so this fabric really helps hold it in place. So we've got the pipe we put in there was a perforated pipe, so it's got holes in it, and it's corrugated, which has the ribs in it. And then what's nice about that is it's flexible. We can flex it into these different spaces and make it fit. Put that pipe on the bottom, so any water that enters this gravel basin will flow through it and enter that pipe, and then flow out through the front face of the wall. And then as we're building up this gravel area, we just alternate front to back, putting dirt on the back side, putting gravel on the front, so we don't have a super thick gravel bed. We have about a foot or two of gravel back behind this wall. Again, with the tight working conditions on this, this is pretty slow, taking one scoop at a time back and forth, but the dump location is pretty close, and it's just the best thing we got on this type of a site. There's no reason to bring in a skid steer at this moment in order to bring the gravel up front here. The mini excavator has the reach to kind of put that stone in place, or as close as possible, and then we can just hand put it in place to the final destination there. Nice butt shot. And now time for compaction. And this is again one of those things that's not the best on the machines, that's hard on a lot of the joints. Could have got a jumping jack compactor in here and compacted it that way, but again, small job, it just makes more sense. Keep things simple, use a machine to compact this, and as long as we do that in lifts, it'll be just as good as a jumping jack compactor. We got a lot of weight here from the rocking motion of the machine. Puts a lot of pressure on the bucket there and allows us to get our compaction. getting ready to build this upper tier of the wall. And again, because of how tight this is, normally you'd build a wall, you'd build the lower terrace first, and then the upper terrace, or vice versa, depending on your job site. But here we're kind of building both at the same time, kind of reaching as far as we can to do the lower section, do the upper section, and then moving towards you know, kind of our exit strategy over here. Here I'm just eyeballing these rocks and eyeballing our level, making sure we're going to be right as for setting this first stone, get everything cleaned out and ready for our stone to go in place. Here's our load of gravel. We'll keep offloading this trailer here. So this day we made a ton of progress. Placed as many stones as we could. We offloaded a full trailer, and basically every day we came out, brought a new trailer load of rock here, and just made the site as efficient as possible. We knew we'd need to bring in a lot of the material, and knew about a trailer load would keep us busy for the day. So we kind of started the job with 7 or 8 boulders, and then every day we brought in some more. Sorry for the headshot here. I gotta adjust this camera angle. This is just not the most optimal position. But yeah, so this stone was kind of a select stone, perfect for this spot. This is where we're kind of turning that wall, and it's got a nice little arc to it. Makes it set really well in there, and allows that wall to flow the right way, and give our pathway that curve, and then give our lower tier there the room for that hot tub. I need a special stone here. It's got to be a perfect size. Of course, it has to be on the other side of the trailer, but we'll take it. It's what we got. And this one had to be the perfect length so we could hit that curve in the right spot and move around that corner. In this upper tier, we've got room back behind this wall for drainage and drainage pipe and drainage rock. We did have some existing utilities back behind there. They've got an old water line, old main line, and lateral pipes, and we actually encountered an old valve box, but that's all been since abandoned. There was actually a pump down to this pond that ran their system. I think that pump quit working, and then they just stopped using the sprinklers. Okay, as you can see here, we're getting late in the day. Things are getting dark, turning on the machine lights, and we're getting to the end of the trailer here. Like I said, we made great progress on this wall the first day. This was the first full day on site, so did an awesome job. And it's really dark now. We've got everything in place that we can do for the day. So now we're just going to offload these last few rocks so we can bring a full load tomorrow. Day number 3. Taking more gravel back here for this drainage on this upper wall. Make some more room here in the pile here so we can get a little bit closer. You can see we are filling up this job site. We have no working space here. Got our drain pipe in the bottom there, dropping our rock in place. We got to backfill that far section before we work any closer. And here's where we had problems. So apparently at one point in time I encountered a rock on our hydraulic line for our backfill blade there. And you can see my blades dropping right there. Whenever you release a hydraulic hose, you should probably have it sitting on the ground. And as I'm going to the store here, you can see the machine will slowly drift off. So yeah, I busted up a hydraulic hose for that backfill blade, and it started leaking, so pulled off that hose, went to O'Reilly's, picked up a new one. It was about 30 bucks. Got it back in place there, and then we're back in business. We'll have a future video kind of talking through that, what happened, what repairs were made, and I think there's a little bit of a flaw there. It's a little bit of a low-hanging fruit there, but we'll just be more cautious in the future, definitely. This is not my favorite place to dump rock, but it's what we had on site, and just trying to keep this gravel driveway as clean as possible. Looks like they have a limestone driveway, but it's a little bit different color. It came from a different pit, so it's a lot darker than this lighter stuff we're putting in. So just wanted to leave this looking nice for the client. So trying to keep all our stuff separated and contained so we're not contaminating their driveway rock. So one thing I didn't show here was the gutter downspout. We connected onto that with a corrugated pipe. So again, it has the ribs, but it's non-perforated. With any drain pipe, you'd never want those to drain into the existing soil. I've seen those used above retaining walls, and they end up causing a lot of drainage problems. They don't carry water, they leach water out when used in that situation. Perforated pipe's intended to leach water in, but when used as a drain pipe, they will leach water out and cause issues. And I guess it's the same idea as a septic system. So with the gutter downspout, used a solid pipe and ran it out to the front face of the wall to daylight. So this upper section here, this will be a pathway, and again that lower section will be for the hot tub. I'm kind of using what's on the roll here just to keep this, again, the gravel from getting contaminated with soil here. Just something on the surface to drop the material on. This is a 2-foot wide bucket, so something to drop it on and then shovel it into place, and we can kind of unroll that fabric and dump it where we want it to be. Here we're getting to the end of this retaining wall section. We're kind of capping this off. Get everything squared up and in place, and this side we're actually going to backfill with soil because of the way the grade sets. So everything above these two tiers we wanted to have good drainage, but on this other side, we'll actually have the water sloping away and down the hill. So we're just gonna do dirt right up against it. Again, using some of this fabric, set it in place here with some clumps of soil. And this will just keep the dirt from blowing out that front face there between the cracks. Once we got our soil back in place, we're back to compacting here. And another great tool for compaction here is just simply the weight of the machine. Running those tracks over it gets a really good compaction. With these stones, you have to be careful when you're compacting not to push the stones out. Got some more timbers. Let's get out of here. We'll kind of clean up and wrap up this last side here. A lot of this is just rinse and repeat, just over and over again. Okay, here we are back to that rock. This is all the old rock. We're putting that back in place, putting it on new landscape fabric here, weed fabric. Hopefully prevent the weeds from growing in this spot. Now we're going to go down to our drain pipe and cut it to size. Dig out a level a little bit there so that we can daylight and then backfill and compact around those. These are pretty, you kind of be gentle around these pipes. Don't want to be backfilling with the machine. Again, another great reason for the gravel. The gravel is self-compacting, so when you put the gravel around these pipes, it compacts without smashing the pipe. And then here I'm just compacting with dirt around these, making sure they drain and daylight out, but doing that all by hand so we're not smashing those. Do a little bit of cleanup for the day. We're gonna haul off the machine here. This was basically the end of phase one. Got the UPS guy here. Yeah, end of phase one. This was kind of the whole scope of the project to begin with. And then tomorrow the plan is to come back in with some rock there, finish out that upper tier, but it's all kind of handwork and not needing the machine anymore. So we'll get it out of there and then kind of do our final site review with the client. Day 4. Today was an early day. Started at 6 a.m. at Home Depot. Pick up the rock for the pathway. Tell how messy my truck is by how long I'm in the back seat there. That was only a few seconds, so not bad at all. I believe I picked up 20 bags of this gravel from Home Depot. This was to match what the client had on site already. Today's kind of the final day of the project, just cleaning up, putting everything back together, and this is the original scope, so part 1. After we do the final walk today, the client elected to add more rock, so we'll be back on day 5 and 6. Having some issues with my trailer brakes, so stopped here for a moment to take a look at those, get them working again. Now headed to our local Bobcat dealership, which opened at 7 a.m. Placed an order on these hoses for the damaged hydraulic line going out to the backfill blade. And we didn't get much footage of today, so here's some kind of final drone shots of the finished product. Ran out of juice here on the memory card, so we'll pick up some photos in here of the finished wall. Again, the main scope of work here was the retaining wall, and then we also added that little pathway on top of that, as well as the drainage going underneath the wall and daylighting out the front face there. Got enough room for their hot tub. We got about a 10 foot by 10 foot pad, and the hot tub's 9 by 9. And they just had some little stone steppers placed in there evenly, and then surrounded by that extra rock. Those 20 bags were perfect to finish off what was there. I had about an inch left over from the stuff we saved, and then put another inch or inch and a half on top of that. On to day 5. We're back on site, brought out some more boulders, and this phase we actually brought out some plywood mats to save the lawn here. It's not going to be a perfect solution. It's still going to see some damage, but this will definitely help, especially we're going to have to make the corner around the house. So this was really slow going. We only had 4 or 5 mats to work with here. So just moving forward inch by inch, taking back these stones. I had a friend out helping me this day, and sent him off to the local Home Depot and had him pick up, I believe it was 16 more of these, and it was right around $900 or $1,000. I wouldn't have done that just for this job. We didn't have that in the budget on this one. But we've got a job coming up that did have that in the budget, so needed to purchase those anyways, so it worked out well to include those on this one and help protect the ground. A little bit extra effort, but I think well worth the time invested, especially around this corner. These plywood sheets definitely moved around a lot. Just as you turn, they kind of pivot on the lawn. Looking at purchasing some grate mats, some ground protection mats, and they've got some diamond plating on them, which should help hold them in place. So if we end up purchasing those, we'll do a review video on those in the future, kind of compare and contrast with plywood versus the poly sheets. Real quick, you got to be real careful with the hydraulic on these. They can let loose pressure anytime. The clamping force on these is not super strong if some of that pressure is released off. We've got some more loose railroad timbers in here, so we'll pull these out of the way, get them hauled off site. Pull out this old dish that they no longer need anymore, and it's in our way. And here's a look at that older retaining wall that we were talking about before. So on this, they use some landscape timbers, set them in a vertical position. They're about 1.5 or 2 feet tall. Set them in concrete to hold them in place. And it seems like I did a pretty good job, but these boards rot out pretty quickly, and that was kind of where they were failing. But this side was actually pretty well intact. The other side was just completely destroyed. Obviously, it was buried. So now we're getting here ready for placing these rocks. Compacting our level here, grading out our base layer. On to day 6. So here we skipped forward quite a bit, missed quite a bit of footage from the day before and today. But what we had to do here to place these rocks in place was we actually had to build the rocks closest to us and build up that level before we could place the rocks closer to the deck. This is a very tight working space, and we've got just a straight shot down the hill. And so here we're kind of on the back end of things. Again, rinse and repeat from what we did on the other side. Just that technical aspect of having to build one side of the wall first and then move towards the deck in order to reach over there. And then here we're just backfilling with the T650 skid steer. And the reason we did the plywood highway today and the plywood mats for the ground protection, and the reason we brought out the skid steer this day is because we were moving materials from the other side of the house to this side of the house. On the first phase of the job, it didn't make sense to bring out a skid steer on site. We were just working in a really tight area. It would just have been more equipment than necessary. On this day, on this phase, that skid steer bucket can hold 5 times more at least what the Mini X here can carry in that bucket. And so going back and forth with the Mini X would have been 5 or 10 times as many trips, whereas the skid steer made pretty quick work of it and less impact on that front and side yard that had nicer grass that we're trying to preserve here. So again, had to do some handwork here. Couldn't really reach all the way back in there with the machine. A lot of those rocks back in that far edge were kind of pushed into place, and this is kind of precarious work right on the edge here. Hope I did a good job building these walls because it has to hold the weight of that machine on top of there. But here we're just manually compacting, especially against that deck area, using the sledge here to compact against the face of the rock. That face is really critical, that face is kind of sealed up. We don't want a bunch of water running down that back face and causing issues. On this phase, we elected not to do drainage back here. We elected to do more stone retaining walls. This is kind of phase 2, kind of unplanned, so a little bit more on a budget on this side of things. So just trying to keep within the costs and still do a good job. And the big thing was putting in a taller retaining wall here. They gave them some working space. Initially we planned on just doing 2 tiers, and we ended up doing 4 tiers in this area, which really opened up this area and also took a lot of the dirt from the other side and pulled it over onto this side. So doing some handwork where we have to, doing some equipment work where we can, and then just doing a nice good compaction on this, making sure water sheds off. And the idea here is we're shedding off water towards the machine, and so it doesn't go over the face of the wall, but kind of comes around the face of the wall. Where the natural yard slopes and drains. And of course, this day I forgot to bring a rake, so we are using the side of a shovel here. Works pretty good. Definitely not as good as a rake, but use what you got and you can always make things work. all these big clumps and roots we'll go ahead and haul off site, and this will be a wrap on the job once we get this all finished up and cleaned up. Get all our tools cleaned up, blow this wall off, get it all clean and nice looking. And then here we are pulling out on our plywood protection mats here. You can see they're all disheveled. You know, driving around on those, pivoting on them, it moves them around quite a bit. But they definitely help spread the weight. I will say the skid steer, this has the wide tracks. That definitely helps protect the ground as well. Kind of spreads the weight of the machine, and when you do turn, it kind of slides across the ground, whereas when you turn on the compact excavator, the tracks kind of dig as you make corners with the compact excavator, so it makes a little bit more of a mess, and as it turns, it kind of plows that track into the ground and moves you know, half an inch or inch of dirt, and over time it just starts digging pretty big ruts. It's not really a weight issue, it's more of the tracks moving when you turn. So there's another look at our plywood mats there, and now we're gonna load up on the trailer here. And you know, the biggest thing with today is just hauling off one machine, hauling off the other. So day 4 is a half day, just kind of a cleanup, that final day on the job. And then again, we came back for day 5 and 6 and did phase 2. Here's a look at what that lawn looks like after we pull up those plywood ground protection mats. The blades of grass are a little bit matted down and spread out, but subsurface is pretty well where it was before, maybe a little bit more compact. As you can see on this corner, it took a little bit more damage, but this area was worse for wear in regards to the rest of the lawn. But overall, it looks pretty good. Within a week or so, a rainstorm here or there, this grass should pop right back up, and you'll hardly be able to tell that we were here. Here's some quick drone shots. We got a little bit better footage of this today. There's again our plywood mats on the ground, protect the lawn, and then it's kind of hard to see, especially phase 2 up here with the drone because of how much vegetation there is. But the difference is very notable up by the deck area. It's just so functional over what was there before. It was kind of scary to walk around that side of the house before, and now you feel comfortable. You'd feel comfortable having kids walk down that step there and around the house there. Here's a good look at our phase 1. We got our dock up there. Phase 1 with our finished rock on it. And then here's our phase 2. And we'll get some close-ups here as well. Got our drain pipe poking out there. All done. Thanks for watching Thrifty Garage. We'll see you on the next one.